Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our Monday interview show. I am so excited that this is launch week for The Hidden Power of the Five Hearts, my new book on awakening the heart through 5 stages. I cannot wait to get this book in your hands. It's going to be shipping even today, possibly, or definitely tomorrow, 9/17, which is the official pub date. Of all the books I've written, this one has changed me. It has awakened my heart. And as we'll get into today, this heart coherence, which you probably have heard me talk about over the last few months and years, is is an aspect of our lifestyle and wellness, which ties everything together. It ties together gut health, energy, our emotional well-being, our mental clarity, our relationships. It's so impactful. And so, in celebration of this very special week, I have with me John Pisani, who's been my long term business partner and has been with me since the first book. And we have done all these books together, going back to the Beauty Detox Solution, which was published in 2011. So it's been quite a journey, John. Welcome to the show,
It's
first of
so
all.
great to be in the studio and live in person, not
In
on Zoom.
person. So we had a book launch event the other day in Venice, and I was saying to everyone, wow, I think back to our first book launch party, which was a very different type of book launch party. It was, lots of press. It was at the London and West Hollywood. Channing Tatum was the host. And there's been all these different parts of the journey, but you've been with me on this incredible journey. You and I have been on our own individual journey. We've been on this journey to share more and more. And here we are today talking about the heart. So, I have my glowing green smoothie right there on the table. And all these aspects of wellness are important: how we eat and how we live. But here, the heart work, as I mentioned earlier, this coherence, this syncing up of your heart, brain, your nervous system, and spiritually into the deepest part of who we are, awakens everything. And what's amazing as we reflect back is that the mission is the same, but it's the peeling the layers of the onion. We're just getting deeper and deeper. And here I feel like we're really in the core now.
Yeah, what's interesting I felt at that party was it was very reminiscent of the first book launch and the fact that it felt so fresh and new. It was kind
Hmm.
of like when you're a little bit ahead of the curve of the information, and this is something that is uh it's breaking a little bit. It's been out there, but it isn't well known.
Yes.
Just when we did the first,
Yes.
and you could feel the energy
Yes.
in the room of people discovering and feeling it for the first time, and it has that kind of pixie dust of this really powerful energy of bringing something new and fresh and powerful
And
into the world
needed.
and needed. And in this day and age, this by far is really, really needed in the world we live in today. So I thought it was interesting, and I'd love to know from you of because it's always interesting when you write your books because you don't try to force it. You let it kind of come to you organically what your subject's going to be and like what
Yes.
inspires you. So how did this come to you and how did you first become inspired to go into this field?
So I've been talking about this a little bit on other shows, but I'll go into more detail here on our show since we're having
Mm.
this conversation with our inner feel good podcast community here, our Solluna community. So I think one of the attributes of wellness and as we unfold is receptivity, right? And I think that's one thing that's been my through line since the first book is I've always been curious. I've always said, what else is there to learn? How can I feel better? And that's been my through line since I started backpacking around the world. I started learning about how to make blended foods and green smoothies. Um, I've just been receptive to what is coming through. And then once I come across something that feels really potent, and in this case, it was a piece of research around the heart brain, I pay attention. It's like breadcrumbs, right? And I think that's partly because this awareness comes because of, I've been a meditator, so I'm more attuned to awareness of like, whoa, this actually did make me feel something. So there's that aspect of it. When I was writing You Are More Than You Think You Are and researching there's a chapter in You Are More Than You Think You Are called You Are Magnetic, those of you that have that book. And there's some scientific reference in that book, although nothing like this book. And I came across a piece of research from Heart Math, and it was how they had been measuring the magnetic field of the heart by sensitive equipment known as magnetometers. It was also about how the heart has 40,000 neurons and is a brain and does send more messages to the brain up here. So it started a spark of, how come I don't really know about this? First of all, I was like, is this true? And then I dug deeper and saw there was over 500 published research papers in really respected journals like the American Journal of Cardiology. And the number two, I thought, how come I don't know about this? And I've been really diving pretty deep. And then number three, I said, well, everybody needs to know about this. So that was happening. And at the same time, I started to feel that I was, and I'll say this, how do I say this? Well, I also feel that when we open ourselves up, Spirit uses us as a channel in different ways. And Yogananda, who many of you know, who brought yoga to the West, has always been such an important being, more than a teacher, guru, however you want to say it. He's just, his teachings have helped me so much. And then I started feeling tuned into Swami Shri Yukteswar, who is Yogananda's guru. And he ran an ashram in India and was said to be very stern, but had the love of 1,000 mothers. And he was a Vedic scholar. So I was going into the heart math research. And then I just felt called to go down this rabbit hole with his book. And he only wrote one book. It was called The Holy Science. And I remember being in Hawaii, and I think I told you this, and I certainly told John, my husband. I was reading this book over and over again. Did I tell you this?
I think you told me this. Well, tell me again, because I'm trying to remember.
So it's a fairly succinct book, and it's basically written in sutra style, sort of like, the Bhagavad Gita or ancient text. So there's, Sanskrit, there's the writing in Sanskrit, there's a translation in English, and then there's a little bit of explanation. So I just felt called in, and, it's hard to put these things in words, but I feel like I was just being drawn into the heart in so many ways. And in this book, he talks about the 5 stages of the human heart. And this really spoke to me because I had never heard, and I'd read, some of the other translations of other texts, but this was so clearly saying dark, propelled, steady, devoted. And he says clean heart. He also talks about the clear heart in that book. So I went with clear heart in my modern interpretation, these 5 states. And it was all lining up. The science was really lining up with these heart stages that he was laying out. So it was my favorite place to hang out, which is the intersection of spirituality and science, where I think it's really important to bring forward truths that are shown for the discerning mind in science, but these spiritual teachings that I feel like are so necessary in today's world for health, for coming together in more unity as a community in the larger community of the world, for our own peace and fulfillment. And so it all came together very organically. I never said to myself, I did get an email from Hay House, my publisher, some months earlier. They were like, hey, what's your next book going to be about? And to be honest, I just said to them, and I always say this, I'll let you know when I'm ready. And it's not me. It's just like something coming through me. And so I just stayed open, and I was receptive to messages I was getting, and the heart is what came through.
Yeah. But I remember how quick, when you get that inspiration, it seemed like this one, you were in it, and it just kind of poured through you.
So one of the things that heart coherence shows is clarity comes. It's, heart coherence is this syncing up, basically, the heart, brain, the nervous system. And what it means is clarity. And that's, one of the biggest, most incredible things that I've experienced through increasing my own heart coherence and this work. It's sort of like I describe this in the book, looking through to the bottom of a clear lake. So once I got this inspiration, Sanskrit would say spanda, okay, you're going to be writing about the heart. It was, all right, here we go. I had, a very clear vision. I wanted it to be the heart stages. I wanted the science to be woven in with the teachings. I presented it to Hay House. I just wrote a little thing about the book and they approved it. I'm, proven author. This is my 8th book. I'd already done a book with them. So they didn't really give me any restrictions. And so I was off to the races. I also had it in my mind that I wanted it to be a succinct book to, first of all, pay homage to Swami Sri Yukteswar's book, which was very succinct. I wanted people to get through the book. So I wrote the book and then I ended up cutting out 20,000 words, mostly science, because I said to myself, okay, I think I'm going a little bit too deep down the rabbit hole. And, you've read the book, John, there is a lot of science in it, but as a
well, you love your
person,
science too.
but I'm saying you could get through the science that's left in the book.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's always been one of your strengths as a writer, is taking these sometimes more complex science and stuff and presenting them in a way that is so relatable and understandable for the average person. And I was going to say, one of the strengths of this book is there is all the science back in this, but you present it in a way that connects to everyday life. And in all the stages, when I was reading, I was like, oh, wow, there I see me. Oh, I see me in this one. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the powerful things of the book that you do is you present it in a way where if the reader can really take away so much from, because it really is written in a way that is easily understandable and relatable.
It's interesting. This morning I did a growth day Zoom with Brendan Burchard. So if you know who he is a I don't know how to classify him. He's a motivational speaker. He's a entrepreneur coach. He does stuff with Oprah. He does a lot of mindset coaching, I think. So he loved the book. We talked about the book. And one thing he said to me is, did you plan for the way you wrote the heart stages? Towards the end, it gets like really elevated. So if you remember, you flow through from the dark heart to the propelled, and then it gets to the light of the clear heart. And there is a lot of light in it. And I said, well, the opposite of light or clear, transparent, is dense and dark. And that was the first heart stage. And this is where we are more heady and stuck in patterns. And this is, I'm laying out the stages, so it makes sense. There is more science in the beginning. So you understand what I'm talking about when I say heart brain. You understand what I'm talking about when we're talking about coherence and incoherence. And so the way it's written, yes, there's more information in the beginning. There's science in all the chapters, but by the time you get to the clear heart, and I'd love to read a little paragraph from it, I feel like it really sings. I got to be honest with you guys. I mean, for me, the devoted heart and the clear heart chapters are my favorite. I love you have to get through all the heart stages, but there's something I want to read to you. The clear heart is the ultimate stage of the highest heart coherence, where the heart, brain, and mind find clarity and become one. Because of this, the clear heart is also the humble heart. It brings you to the realization that no one is better than anyone else. All souls are equal, as Yogananda says. All hearts are fundamentally equal. The clear heart is just more transparent. So, and then I go on to say, these heart stages aren't, sequential, like you get to one and then you never go back. We flow in and out. So even though this is, the state of heart-brain harmony, these are moments we tap into when you're doing the dishes and you're not thinking, you're just sort of out of time and space, or you look into your dog's eyes or a loved one's eyes, or you're looking at the sunset and you're just feeling this oneness. And so what's really powerful about these teachings in the book is that you're learning to what's called increase your coherence capacity. So your baseline with these tools gets higher and higher so that you're able to experience more times in the clear heart and the devoted heart. You're actually training yourself. And over time, it just gets higher and higher and higher. So there's nothing, this isn't random. This isn't saying, oh, some of us have better karma and some people are just, yes, there's a truth. Some souls may come in a little bit lighter. They don't have as much trauma in their childhood. They have more joy. But what's so powerful about this work is that you can go in, you can start to blast through old patterns, and you start to clear things out. And then you spend more time in these higher heart stages.
That's so true. When I first read it, I spent time in a lot of different stages, depending, and you can go in and out. But what I also think it's interesting is the way you set that, and you said where you start with in a certain order of it. It gives you a by reading those and having those, by the time you get to the clear heart and reading that, you have such a broader base of understanding the different stages that it makes it more powerful and more understandable, easier to understand. If you just went to that first, you wouldn't quite have as powerful experience as you read the other chapters first.
Well, it's crucial actually, and again, they're quite succinct, but to
Yeah.
read all the stages because we can all be in, let's say you're in a steady heart stage where coherence starts to grow and you feel more anchored in yourself, but maybe you see something on the news or something triggers you on social media or somebody says something that is stored somewhere in one of your amygdalas and reminds you of a wounded child. Boom, you're back in frustration or anger or whatever, from the dark heart. So what this work has done for me is you pull out much faster. It doesn't mean you're not in the lower heart stages, but I'm not in there as long. Now, John, you have known me so long and you can see, and I've been saying this to everyone, this has made such a big difference in my life, but can you share what a difference you've seen in me as another person?
Oh, yes. Because I think now you have the ability to pull out where before you would stay in those stages
Or not, or,
or
and
not
not
even
even I wouldn't be in them as often and also not have the awareness.
exactly. You wouldn't even know you're in that. It's just now
Yes.
it brings
Vision grows.
what I've noticed like in you doing this is that you're much more aware of when you're in those different stages and pulling out of those stages, trying to better the way you handle when you're in those stages.
So yeah, there's that aspect. And then for me personally, which I guess no one else can really know, we don't know how we are on the inside except for
Mm.
ourselves, right? Is just how much lighter I feel
Mm.
day to day, how much more peaceful. Because even before, there'd be times where I'd be doing something, you're at your child's birthday party, whatever, but there could be thinking or there just could be like ruminating over something. I actually talk about you in the steady heart where I say, remember how many times I would call you and be like, is everything going to be okay? Like you're going to this outside source to get that validation. I would say me calling you and talking through stuff. And as I talk about in the book, sometimes it would be for hours and hours, especially when I started to become more of a public figure. And, I remember something happened when I was on Good Morning America. One time there was, um, a group of registered dietitians. I was talking about diet soda and stuff, and I sort of felt attacked for the first time. And it just was really hard for me to handle. So, anyways, for years there was a lot of this. Again, I think I speak for myself, going outside of ourselves to feel okay, whether that's people complimenting us on social media or having someone literally say that it's okay, or having to always be in a relationship or whatever it is. And I talk about this story in the book, if you remember, where it's probably down 80%, 85%,
Oh yeah.
maybe 90.
Well, yeah, and I think that that's the power of the book because
Yeah.
it gives people, readers, the opportunity to learn. Because the biggest thing is we're unaware if we're doing any of this, and we're unaware of all of the stuff that's going on within our heart and how powerful that our hearts are as far as for our emotions and what we're feeling.
Yes.
And by having a book like this where you can just say, okay, hold on, stop. I recognize that I'm in this certain stage. I'm doing these behavior. It gives you the tools and with the heart aligned meditation to really,
Yes.
which is such a life changing meditation
Yes.
that the only meditation I think I've ever done in my life to where I can physically feel differently immediately after doing it.
Oh, well, it's what you're describing is that physical shift, and I'll show the graph again for any of you watching this on YouTube. Otherwise, as you get your copy of the book, this is going to be on page 29. See, this is the pattern. This is important to
Mm.
point out. It's the pattern, not just the number of your HRV. This is an anger, and then this is appreciation. So, as you said, John, you feel differently in your body, but it's not just your body. We can tune into the body, but since the heart is the main biological oscillator, it's setting the rhythms. And Dr. McCready, who we did the heart aligned meditation study with, one of the things he says over and over again is emotions run the show. Emotions run the show. Emotions are at the root of why stress disables us. It's not the traffic. It's not the child's tantrum. It's the feeling of frustration and overwhelm and time pressure that create the cortisol spikes, right? That create the fight or flight in our nervous system. So when you're feeling it in your body, it's actually awakening this incredible pathway of the heart brain. And so that neuroplasticity doesn't just refer to the neurons and the pathways in the brain, but between the heart and the brain. So what this means is we change our perceptions. So you said you start to be more aware. You start to be aware of what others are saying and doing, like more deeply. This is where emotional intelligence grows. You can start to see context versus being really literal, which is something I used to do. Like, but you said this. It's like, no, I actually meant this. So you can start to not be so literal because you start to soften into what real communication is. But you also see yourself more. And so what that means is, as the heart awakens, and this is one of the spiritual truths that Yogananda and Sri Yukteswar teach, your third eye opens. So you're able to see, you're able to perceive. The heart aligned meditation and the tools in the book also increase your coherence capacity. So over time, and now I've been doing this a few years, I can just say, I'm so grateful to feel lighter and just more joyful and blissful in my day-to-day life. That propelled heart stage, which is stage 2, which is where I spent a lot of my life, like a lot of my life. And I think most people, as I just become aware of these heart stages, and you see that there's a lot of suffering because the propelled heart is restless. It's never enough, never content, always on. How do I appear to other people? Do people like me? Am I too fat? Am I too this? Am I too that? My plans, trying to control life. I mean, it's exhausting even talking about it. So when you come in and you start to create this coherence, we start to realize the truth of what Sri Yukteswar says when he says the real necessities of the human heart have nothing to do with anything outside of himself. Nothing. So this means the self-fulfillment, the self-worth, the self-love, the peace, everything actually coming from inside of you. And I feel, also, John, I feel really peaceful. Another thing, since you know me well, this is our 8th book launch together. I feel so much more peaceful going into a launch. Where typically it's like running around and like, what's going on here? And are we doing enough? And just these feelings of lack and pressure. I just feel so peaceful because I know no matter what happens, first of all, I'm just so grateful. Number 2, I've benefited so much myself. And number 3, it's more like this gentle offering out versus like, I need you to get this book. Listen, this is amazing. And if people want it, they can have it too. But it's not the neediness of the propelled heart.
Yeah. And I think you've let go of the attachment of success, what we deem as success.
Well, yeah, that's what the propelled heart's attached. And then the steady heart is, connected, self-fulfilled.
Yeah. And I've watched you in this, even at our book launch event, you were so calm. And I think just the nature of the subject matter, and you're taking it and living it.
Yes.
So, and I think that's where I feel like watching people as they discover this. It's almost like you're living it, and they feel it, and then
Yes.
it's just a different. When we did that study, we had them for a month, and I would talk to all the different people setting up and I could feel the changes, and you could feel talking to them, and even them telling us how much they changed over 1 month's time of doing the meditation.
Yeah.
And that's just in 1 month.
Well, what's amazing is in that study as well, we had ex-military, we had busy moms, we had all different types of people. We had artists. I know of at least one artist who was in the group. And 2 of the people in the group were professional women. One was a doctor, one was a high-level producer who wanted to find a partner and eventually want to have a family and had been on, all the different dating apps and had been unsuccessful for years. Within a few weeks of doing our study, both of these women have found their life partner. One of them recently got engaged, and one of them is about to get engaged. So consistency, But we're also not talking about a huge amount of time. The meditation is less than 8 minutes. So if people are doing it 4 times a week, we're talking about 32 minutes a week. This is one of the most powerful things we can do. We've always talked about health from the inside out, beauty from the inside out, but it turns out everything is created from the inside out. And I mean everything. And back to this, or not back to it, I've talked about this on another podcast, but this torus field of the electromagnetic field, which I just want to point out because it's so powerful. This is on page 45.
Mm.
If you guys are watching this, or when you get your book, hopefully you'll see it on page 45. This electromagnetic field, which is 100 times stronger than the one produced by the brain, is always extending out. And so before I had this knowledge, now I can reflect back and think of times where, you felt something when you walked into a room. You just knew something was off, or you didn't want to sit at that table in the restaurant next to a certain person. You couldn't explain why. And then we can also reflect back on our own life when we were in a certain energetic state and just emotional energy, and how that didn't help us out. Because basically this field, which is projected out 8 to 10 feet, changes based on your emotional state. And it also gets stronger and more coherent and harmonious the more you are elevating your coherence. So what happened in our study was that on average, there was a 29% increase in coherence. This, I believe, was a huge factor in those ladies meeting their partners, because they were doing the same apps. One was on Bumble, one was on Raya. And yet, they were just in a different energy field where people can say, hey, what are you up to? Like, I'd like to get to know you. I want to ask you on a date. There's something about you. Like, I want to, come in, whether that's in a party or whatever, online situation, because energy is registered. So this is such practical information, especially from that propelled heart perspective. And the dark heart, it's like, do more, spend more time, like never enough, right? Versus, oh, there's a different way to go about doing things. And it's from this power of the heart, which is more billion, quadrillion times more expansive. It's non-linear. It can blast through barriers. It's out of time and space. It just can change outcomes in not the way that your mind thinks it's going to take.
Well, it's that power of opening the heart. And when you feel an open heart, you're just a different person. When your heart is open, the way even you look at a person, the way your energy is radiating is so
Yeah.
different. And it's such a bright light. And that's such great practical, because, dating and meeting people is one, like, I think universally you talk to, it's so hard to meet anybody. It's so hard to meet somebody that understand. And by having that capacity, it just opens yourself up to attracting someone who can feel that and is in that space.
So if you look at the science, what it shows is these frequencies are, and again, the magnetometers are measuring magnetic fields. So there is a truth to like attracts like, and you can also repel things away, even if you think, you're saying your affirmations, but underneath there's this energy that isn't really lining up. So one of the things about heart coherence is it's creating harmony, and it starts inside of you physically. First of all, the harmony of your heart, your brain, and your nervous system. And then it starts to change your perceptions and your thoughts. So there's just this feeling of flowing in life instead of all the resistances and the upset and the drama and the chaos. And in your field, this is creating a more magnetic, more attractive field. So whether it's a love interest, or maybe it's just different opportunities that can move your business forward, or your, whatever personal interests forward, it's just amazing to see that there is a different way than pretty much all of us have been taught. We live in a culture that's like, no pain, no gain. Do more. I did the Rich Roll podcast recently, and he said he has a belief system that he shared on the show that if he's not exhausted at the end of the day, it means he hasn't worked hard enough. Right. And so that was like something that, for whatever reason, was sort of encrypted in his mind. And we talked about that, and we said, well, that's a past, that's a limited belief that comes from past experience. And when you are in this coherence, this power of the heart, it's not about exhaustion. It's about efficiency and harmony and connection with yourself and other people. Exhaustion actually comes from when you are spinning your wheels, and there's actually a lot of things that are inefficient, such as going with ego's way of time pressure. Dr. McCready says that, year after year, one of the top reasons people are stressed out is time pressure. It makes you feel like you're hurrying and that you're not doing enough. And then you get exhausted more. So there's just, again, this more centered way. There's a section in the book, and I believe it's in the Propelled Heart chapter, where I talk about heart time, right? Being in heart coherence is actually the most efficient way, because you don't have to hurry. You also don't have to go slow. But what happens is you do things with quality, and you can have really clear communication. So you have less messes to clean up, where you say, oh, sorry, I meant it like this, or, apologize, or kind of rush past someone. And to your point, have a closed heart, where, maybe you were a little rude with the, checkout person at Starbucks, or maybe you rush, you didn't let someone into the intersection. And in the devoted heart chapter, so this is how we start to awaken the heart. It's in these moments also that the heart awakens. It's not these just big things, but actually in each moment. Heart-based living is in this moment. How do I bring an open heart into, like, how do my words flow through it? How do my actions flow through it in this moment? How can I be present with this person on the Zoom who may be struggling a little bit? Or how can I be extra kind to this person I'm encountering in the parking lot at my child's school? Or, how can I, it's like we're all contributing to the field, right? So how can I add in love, kindness, and peace? What am I actually putting into the field? And when we're in ego, when we're hurrying, when we're in the propelled heart, we don't really think about that. We're just sort of trying to survive and rush through. And so this heart-based living changes our everyday moments. And also, what the research shows, it actually elevates our gut health. It slows aging. It balances our hormones. So it's win-win all around.
And a few of the other things that I felt really connected to in the book was how heart coherence relates to fear and that relationship, as well as the relationship with forgiveness. Talk a little
Yeah.
about that, because it's such a power. Those are two powerful emotions that a lot of times derail us and really send us into a spiral.
So there's a lot of fear in the dark heart. So the dark heart is the first stage where the heart and the brain aren't talking properly. So what this means is, and I use this analogy in the book, you can imagine if your one leg goes this way and one leg goes down the other way, and you split your pants, you can hurt yourself, you can hurt other people. But really what's going on here is you're not seeing properly. So dark is not evil. It's actually lack of vision, right? Because you can't really see. So it's like there's a house divided. You're confused. And when we're confused and we don't feel like, I don't know what's going on here, what happens is you don't trust life. You don't feel held. And so this brings up a lot of fear. So what mind tries to do is it clamps down, it tries to control life, it tries to control outcomes, because that's the only way it can start to feel safe. Well, if I do this and if I stay in this job, they're not going to lay me off, and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to stay here, I'm going to stay here. So we stay very small, right? And then you spend a lot of time getting freaked out by what you see on the news and on social media feeds. As you start to awaken from the inside, from your heart's power, you start to feel this growing steadiness from the inside. Because what happens when your heart and your brain, and again, your nervous system starts to line up, you're no longer constantly in sympathetic nervous system overload, which is fight or flight, which is literally like warning signals going off. You stay more in rest and digest. You start to see this balancing in. So it starts on this, deep bodily, energetic, hormonal level, where you literally feel different in your day-to-day experiences. And then as you continue to do the work and your baseline grows, you feel more calm and more centered, and less of that needy pushing. I need this to work out. And so it's just the fear. And I can say this for myself as someone who had a lot of anxiety and would talk to you specifically about things I'd be fearful of. It just starts to shift and melt away, because fear is born of the mind and all the thoughts and overthinking. So when you're in your heart and you start to change your thoughts, you can really shift your relationship with fear. Now, it doesn't mean fear doesn't come up. There's a practice in the third chapter, or in the third stage, which is known as the steady heart, called the heart aligned steady in life practice. And this is a little bit different than the heart aligned meditation. Many of the practices in the book are to be integrated in life. So the steady in life practice, which I use all the time, by the way, is when you feel fear come up, or, anger, or whatever incoherent emotion. And there's more of the science and the tools in the chapter, but you use your heart as an anchor as the waves of emotions come through, because energy and motion is what emotions are. Um, they're moving through. When we hold, when we fixate, when we kind of go down the rabbit hole into stories and narratives, then we keep that fear energy more alive, versus just not pushing it down, not pretending it's not there, but anchoring in the heart and letting it wash through. So that's fear. And then forgiveness is a really big one too. And I don't talk about forgiveness until the devoted heart, which is the fourth stage. And this is because in the beginning, you may be, feeling like you're pulling out surface thorns. You're kind of dealing with, some of the things that are easier to see and look, and you're like, oh, I'm a little bit more calm in the morning, or, I felt more intuition rise up about my self-care. I just knew what to eat today. I felt more in flow. But then as you start to remove those layers, then you can go deeper into the deeper stuff. And one of those deeper things is forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others. And it can almost feel impossible to forgive from the mind, because then we get caught up in the literalness of like this or this happened. But, and it's a 6-part practice where you get coherent, and from the heart, which is so highly intelligent and has so much wisdom, and again, can see and perceive differently than the mind, you can start to let go of things that maybe you thought you never could have before.
That's so true and so powerful, because, and you hit on that forgiveness of self. And I think most people, when they hear forgiveness, you immediately go to, oh, forgiving other people. And you don't immediately go to forgiving yourself, which would seem almost like you have to forgive yourself almost before you can forgive. I mean, to truly forgive you, because it's forgiving yourself is not, it's so subconscious. It was one of the harder things for me to realize.
Mm.
Like, I didn't realize, wow, there's so much that I never like forgave myself for. Oh, I thought you made mistakes or this or that, and you just kind of bury them a little bit, and then realize that the core of some of these issues was not being able to really forgive yourself.
I think that it oscillates, right? Because as you forgive others, and you keep awakening, you may be also able to see a part you played that you didn't see before. So sometimes we're not even aware of the stuff we're supposed to forgive in ourselves. What was really funny about this chapter in this section is that there was something that I had struggled to forgive for a long time, a couple of years. And it was about someone sharing private information about me and John. And, you know, anyways, it got out, and then the information was told to someone else who I wasn't ready to tell, and then that person came to me directly, and it was a lot. And I remember when I first started thinking about writing this section, I said to myself, I haven't really forgiven this person, because it comes in layers. And it was like moments I felt like I had, but then when this person's name came up, I realized I hadn't really forgiven. And so one of the things about the heart work and forgiveness is there's this like using the heart like a solvent. Like, when you soak things, you soak dishes that need extra scrubbing. And one of the things that you do is you keep like zooming out, because the heart is wider. So it's like you're seeing it from a third party perspective, which can help to reframe and maybe just give a little more clarity. Well, that person wasn't really consciously trying to hurt, or even if they were, in some cases, they're coming from this place or whatever it is. It took me a long time to really fully forgive, if I'm totally honest, to where it's like the truth is I don't feel super drawn to being really close to this person, right? Because the other thing about the heart is that it's not like, I'm going to let my heart get trampled upon all the time. If there are people that are hurtful, if there are people that don't respect boundaries, this work is not saying, okay, I'm going to be a pushover. So whilst I don't maybe want to be best friends with this person, I don't have to hold on to this heart block. I don't have to hold resentment in my heart, which ultimately hurts me, not the other person. So forgiveness is really for our greater expansion and our greater freedom. And the heart allows you to go into that freedom. It allows you to expand in a way that the mind never could.
It's so interesting. And almost by expanding the heart, it seems like you create those natural boundaries, so it's easier for those situations in your future not to happen because
Yeah.
you're naturally, as you expand
Intuitive,
intuitively, you.
you're clear.
Mhm.
So what I feel like, what's funny too, all the changes, I feel like my voice is a little bit different or just how I show up. There's a deeper groundedness. Where before I might be like, oh, I had to always be nice or be like this or that. But there's just so much clarity. So you can really say what you mean, whether it's a boundary or a need or reflect something back to someone. Like I'll even say to John, like, the other John, my husband, you're being unreasonable. Whereas before, if he was mad, I would just sort of be like, "Oh my gosh, I have to fix this." And now I'm like, actually, this is unreasonable, and it's calm and it's clear. And also, he'll reflect something back to me instead of being defensive. It's easier for me to just say, "Yeah, you're right. I could see how I came across there." So,
But that's because by practicing this and really living
yeah.
this, it allows you to do that because if you're in, let's say, the darker stages, you're going to react because
Well, you can't see.
you can't see it, and
Yeah.
you're coming from a place of emotion of in the brain, like it's a reaction and
It's
an emotion.
exactly again the incoherence, which is demonstrated in HRV pattern, shows that there is a chaotic, disordered pattern, and that echoes through the body. It echoes in your thoughts. It echoes in your breath pattern. It echoes in many ways. So when we get coherent and we get calm, then we start to be clear. Again, it's like looking through the bottom of a lake that's clear versus if there is a big storm and the mud is kicked up, right? When we go into these states of anger and emotional turbulence, we can't, it's hard to see properly. And a lot of people walk around with a certain level of irritation. So another thing I've been talking about on podcasts is how much my energy's gone up. And the science shows, 2 minutes of irritation puts into motion 1,500 different biochemical processes that ultimately drain your energy. So think about all these micro moments throughout the day where we're up, we're down. So this is so powerful. And for us to just stay centered. All the things we've been talking about for years. I guess to take it full circle, we've been talking about green smoothies. We're really passionate about digestion and our SBO probiotics at Solluna and our detoxy. And I still take these things every day. So to me, this is about right? We need to have the right supplements. We need to eat the right food. And knowing about heart coherence is going to take everything to a whole other level of awareness, deepening your relationships, having more emotional intelligence, not having to deal with so much drama and chaos and stress and hormonal dysregulation and maladaptive coping patterns, but just to be just so much more resilient. So I'm really grateful, John, that you've been with me on all this journey. I mean, we've been talking about so many different things as we moved through all these different books. And, I just had to find this wholeness in myself. There was a time where I said to you, I just want to talk about spirituality. And it was like, no, but all these other things too. Like I'm still eating, the food is still important, all these things. And now it's like it's all integrated. And I feel like the heart has brought everything together.
Yeah, and it's, I think part of your journey is, and why it so resonates is you authentically write from a place of what's going on, within your,
Yeah.
you kind of, it's a melding of the two worlds of, because you're not kind of writing about something, oh, here's what, like I'm disconnected from it. You're completely connected to it and living it. And so that's what makes it so powerful is because you're in it and
Yeah.
you're learning and you're
Experiencing it
and
all.
reaping the benefits just as everyone else who would read the book is.
Yes.
And that, I think that's the part I think is so, I mean, it's got to be a good feeling for you to have that outlet to really work through some of the stuff too.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. this book did feel very different than other books. Some of the books, when I wrote the Beauty Detox Solution, I had been living that dietary philosophy and started to learn about energy. There's a section of that book where I talk about the yogis. One of the reasons they say not to, to be plant-based, to be more vegetarian, is because the energy of what you're taking in, the living plants, elevates. And I've been living it, and I was so excited to share it. This book changed me in the writing. I was starting to change when I came across it. I feel like I put out this video a couple of weeks ago where I said, I live this book. Like, I really live this book. It's not just, okay, I got this, like a food thing you check off. Because the thing about the heart is it keeps expanding. There's no end to opening the heart. It's one of these spiritual truths. So you're unlocking higher and higher levels of energy and bliss and peace. And I've really experienced that. And there's times where it's like this quantum leap. And I just think, wow, like this is so much like amazing. And I'm just sitting around and I really don't need that much outside of myself anymore, whether that's validation or reassurance or entertainment, or my life's gotten really simple. So I want everyone to have it too, and I'm just so excited. So thank you, John, so much for being on this journey with me, sharing your big heart. One of the things I said at the book launch parties, John is pure of heart. I'm just really grateful that you've been a supporter with me, and through me and us, we're able to share with all of you all these life-changing tools and parts of the lifestyle. And I couldn't be more grateful for you being part of the community. And I cannot wait for you to read The Hidden Power of the Five Hearts and to get this into your hands. So thank you again, John.
Well, thank you. It's been wonderful, and it's been amazing for myself going through these years of evolving also within myself and taking these things and bettering myself and bettering my life. So I have to thank you too. And that's what the great thing in life. When you open that heart like that, everyone helps everyone. And you realize and you don't. I had one moment the other day. I was talking on the phone, and I was sharing this with a person, and I could hear the energy when I started, and then the conversation, they were in a completely different place, and they actually said, "Wow," they were, "Thank you. I just feel so much better." And it's because when you're sharing, and as a collective, as you say in the book, we can make, this is where everyone does count. Where you say, "Oh," people say, "Oh, it's just one person." This is one thing where when you read this book and everyone does count, because it builds and it builds and it builds.
So thanks for bringing that up as we close out here. Another thing I want to, really emphasize is that we've been talking a lot about the individual benefit of this work, but right in the beginning of the book, in the Five Hearts chapter, there's a section called A New Heart-Centered Society. And another reason that I'm really excited about this is that we look out in the world today and we see a lot of division and fragmentation and hostility and different groups. And now we're going into election and all sorts of things are happening. As Swami Sri Yukteswar said, though, there are these periods, and they've been laid out in the Vedic texts of these yugas, these time periods. There's a Kali Yuga. We can say there's these dark ages. We're like in a dark age now. But the more people that awaken into this higher energy, into the heart energy, we start to usher in a new age known as the Satya Yuga, where there's more love and there's more connection and there's more peace. And what I just want everyone to know how powerful you all are, each of us, because fields intersect. And again, this is a spiritual truth. When you grow your coherence, not only do you benefit, but you are able to influence the circles around you, starting with your family and your friends and the people in your community and the people you interact with at your children's school and the people in your work and the people you run into at, Target or whoever. I mean, all fields intersect. So this is how we change the world. All hearts are needed right now. So when I read that section in the Clear Heart, it said all hearts are equal. So what that also means is all hearts are equally powerful to put into the field. right? So we all are needed to awaken, to share about this work, to do the work, to go in. So I encourage everyone to, please check out the book, of course. Also, please check out the free meditation track we have at mysolluna.com/5heartsbook. Please share this page. Please share the free meditation with everyone you can, because the more of us that come in, our sincere intention, this is how we're going to make a more peaceful, loving, kind society. And this was, some of the things that it's going to take many of us. It's not just going to be like, one or a few leaders or people. It's going to take all hearts.
Yeah. It's the collective.
It's the collective.
But everyone has the power to be part of that collective.
That's right. So we'll end on that note. Thank you all so much for coming in today. Please check out the show notes at mysolluna.com. Please check out the 5 Hearts, which is available now. You can check it out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. You'll also check out more about our practical lifestyle on the website, including our new Glowing Greens powder. Please join our newsletter if you haven't, so you can stay on top of our latest news and keep in touch with us. And last little reminder that on the podcast tab on the website, you can also submit questions for our Q&A show on Thursdays. So thank you again all so much. Thank you, John, again.
Thank you.
From our hearts to yours, sending you much love, and see you back here Thursday for our next Q&A show.